بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome to Finding Me on the ITV networks. A very interesting discussion today with a dynamic woman, Zahida. Shaikjee is a physiotherapist by training and by discipline, but she's expanded into very many more holistic ways of treating and healing. If you remember, we did a previous discussion with Dr. Wahida Juma speaking about cupping and reintroducing the heritage of Islam into healthy living and in terms of healing ourselves. But beyond cupping and of course beyond just normal medical science, there are other ways to maintain ourselves and to improve our health, our body, because a good body, a good health, a very strong individual, strong mind can then perhaps perform many more tasks, and we become much more better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for we need good health in order to do our ibadah. And serving mankind with a good health, with a good strong body is a form of ibadah. So with that, I'd like to say assalamu alaikum, Zahida, and thank you very much.
Wa alaikum salam, Quraysha.
It's wonderful to be here in the mother city. I never thought I'd do an interview in Cape Town, but I'm so glad for the opportunity and that you made your time available.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate the privilege to be able to be here with you today.
Wonderful. So Zahida, we have a lot of things to talk about, and it's for me especially health, the environment, and I know that you're a nature lover. These are important issues because I do believe that the mind coordinates with the environment. If there's a positive chi in the environment, if there's a positive, feeling and energy out there, it impacts on who you are. But we'll come to that. First, I want to start off with your medical career. So how did you start?
I graduated many years ago, qualified at the end of 1989. Graduate from WITS, and then I started my working career in Cape Town, and I worked for just under three years at Quraysha, and then I went abroad and I spent about 12 years overseas. So I was 6 years in Canada, 5.5 years in Saudi Arabia, and I was very blessed to be able to stay within my profession, gain all that experience, and then return home more than 10 years ago to start up my own practice in Cape Town, and also do other disciplines like my yoga teacher's training, which I did 2 years ago, and then also the Thai yoga massage, which I also incorporate in the work that I'm doing as a manual therapist.
So physiotherapy is a very important discipline and an arm of medicine.
Very much so.
It helps in healing and in restructuring, especially traumatic conditions, right?
For sure.
Do you find that, let's just come to the political context of physiotherapy, that it was very difficult to get into the field, that it was limited, that positions were kept mostly for white females or white males, and that to make that entry in 1989, that was still very much apartheid.
You're absolutely right, because I actually started my university career in 6 years before that. So it was very much in the apartheid era, and I was one of 3 token non-whites in the class of about 38 who were mostly whites, especially at WITS. We were told to study, to go over and study in Durban at Westville, because that was the so-called Indian University. Yes. But my dad was very instrumental in making sure that we got our results up to scratch, and then we persevered. And I did 2 years of BSc, and then from there used that as a stepping stone to get into physio.
Yes, but so you still had to go the long route to get into it. And so why didn't you practice your physiotherapy then in Gauteng or Johannesburg as it is now? And why did you come to Grootskeer or to Cape Town?
My parents relocated to Cape Town, and so that it ended up being better for me to then come to the city, and I'm very pleased we did.
So in your initial years of physiotherapy, were you dealing with more accident victims, or was it more sports injuries? What kind of work did you do?
It's a very broad field, physiotherapy, very much like medicine. So you have subspecialties, respiratory, neuro, orthopedics, and pediatrics. So you can specialize as well in those areas. So when you do your training, you're trained across the board and you're a generalist. And then you can choose to become a specialist in one of those fields. So my specialty is orthopedics. So I was very fortunate to be able to work in a great facility like Quraysha, where I got experience in all the different areas. And then when I did my postgraduate courses, I channeled that into orthopedics. So even when I was overseas, I did exactly the same thing. I did general work because I worked in tertiary centers abroad as well, both in Canada and in Saudi Arabia. And then but when I did my postgraduate courses, I focused on orthopedics and sports injuries.
What was the experience like in Saudi Arabia?
Amazing. I think the one thing that really struck out for me was the fact that sometimes as strong, independent females, we take one thing for granted, and that's our freedom. So that was the one thing that struck out for me. The other thing was the fact that the Saudi people were amazing in allowing professionals like myself who didn't quite know the language that well to treat them. And I think that is something that has to be said to allow health professionals.
Yeah, it's strange that you say Saudi Arabia and Canada today, both the countries at loggerheads with each other.
And they're very contrasting,
very contrasting.
Not just in the weather.
Yeah.
I mean, I went from minus 40 in Winnipeg to plus 40 in Jeddah, in the desert. So yeah.
And the experience in Canada?
Amazing. I think I was very pleased to be able to work in a tertiary center that I did in Winnipeg for about 5 years, and then I relocated to Toronto.
Okay.
And I worked there for about a year and a half. And in both those cities, I got amazing experience. I think also specialized in different areas. The rehab centers abroad certainly they work rather efficiently. They've got the resources, they've got the funding. So I was fortunate to be able to grab all of that experience and then bring that home.
Yes, so now coming home 10 years ago, and obviously it's a bit longer now, and if you compare that so many years ago you were in these centers, in these countries where they had the specialties, has South Africa made a headway towards improving itself in terms of these facilities, or are we basically regressing?
It's a tricky question. I do think in terms of the degree that I got, that took me abroad, that was phenomenal. Right. And I think we were, as South Africans, we were always welcomed with open arms wherever we went in the world. South African medicine's
been recognized, yes.
Exactly. Right. Our skill was far superior. Yeah. I know also leaving, before I left to go to Canada, I was a little apprehensive, thinking that I might not be able to be on par or matching with my Canadian counterparts. And I can say without a doubt, the clinical experience and the hands-on experience that we got in South Africa was far superior than what they got abroad. Academically and perhaps research-wise, they might excel, but in terms of hands-on clinical work we did. I did end up working at Quraysha Ismail again. I worked for about 4 years in Canada, and then came back home and worked for just a short while at Quraysha Ismail. And in that 4 years, I could see there was quite a change. And I do think, unfortunately, it does seem to be regressing. I think more so in terms of the fact that there's just so much of the population number has grown. Yeah. And then we also have limited resources, and I think most health professionals are feeling stretched, especially in the hospitals, government hospitals.
Yes, but do you find that the equipment has been updated, or techniques have been updated, or?
No, I think in terms of technique, clinical technique, I think we are on par than the rest of the world. Yes. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say about equipment too well because I haven't worked in the government sector for a long time. I do some private work at Rondebosch Medical Center. I have about 2 doctors that refer patients to me from there. So I think the private hospitals are generally better equipped. I wouldn't be able to say in government at this point in time. But I do think we try to keep up. Yeah.
And there is a struggle right across. I mean, there's huge changes that need to be done, and and most of it is due to mismanagement anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not that we don't have the potential or the capacity, yes, and no accountability.
Yes, that's the big thing. I always say that's the one big thing that's lacking in South Africa, that Canada has. They held you accountable, and you had to be.
It's an ethical workspace, and ethics is missing right across the board. It's not only in medicine or in government, it's across, in the private sector as well, corporates. Yeah. If you look at it in teaching, in the environment, if you look at it, even in the NGO sector, there is a lack of ethics.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and ethics is very, very important in the development of a good society, but I think also in mental health care and in well-being, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah, there needs to be, and it's not just, you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with people, you're not dealing with machines, so you've got to give part of your heart and soul into your work, and I think that empathy and that compassion that comes through is what's needed.
Do you find that the kind of compassion that was, perhaps in the older generations where medicine was practiced for the love of it, as a form of healing, if you look at it, like yesterday as Jasser Auda spoke about hospitals that were established during the early period of Islam, with the clinics, etc. Doctors came there, health practitioners came there to serve the people. It was not a commodification. It was not about money. It was about healing. The focus was on healing. Do you find that has kind of eroded, shifted, that is very little of that actual ethical underpinning in the way training is also done?
Definitely. I do think that it's exactly as you're saying. Unfortunately, it's become a business, the healthcare sector. You still find some really good individuals out there that are dedicated, that take it as a calling, that are doing their best, but they are fewer and far between, unfortunately. And it is a sad state.
Yes, so that's also just as in terms of decolonizing education. I think we need to decolonize Islam, the healthcare sector, the way professionals work. There's a lot of work to be done, but we have to go to a break. When we come back, I want to raise this issue of ethics into holistic teaching, to shift from one discipline and to incorporate much more into the way we understand healing. Sure. Okay, so we'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment today on Finding Me in the ITV networks in the beautiful city of Cape Town with one of Cape Town's very beautiful residents, Zahida Shaikjee. We're discussing health and in a way not only physical health, but I think mental health is important. All of it comes together in the way in which you feed your body and the way in which you treat your body. So Zahida, we spoke about the ethical dimension of a health professional, how you treat your patient. But that also comes together with what the patient expects and what the patient is willing to give as well, right? So the mind plays a very important role.
Absolutely.
And is that why you then shifted towards, a discipline in yoga, because it strengthens the mind and it strengthens the body?
For sure. I do think when I did my teacher's training 2 years ago in yoga, it was to deepen my own knowledge, and then I noticed it was really amazing in what it was doing for myself. And I thought that would be a lovely adjunct to add on to the rehab, especially for my patients, intermediate to advanced rehab. And you're absolutely right about the fact that it is the mind. It's also the breath, which we've forgotten about. And that's such an amazing tool that we have right there. And for most of us, we haven't thought about it. We've also changed the breathing, and there's so many benefits that we can do to just sort of tap into that breath. So you're certainly right. The yoga has allowed me to transform the way it is I treat my patients, and also in terms of the ethical, it's more a contract between myself and the patient, always finding out what their goals and needs are. And I always say too that I can't do it as a therapist on my own. They need to buy into what it is that I'm providing as a service, and then help me to help them.
So do you find that there is a big difference between the technique of yoga and the technique of physiotherapy, or is there a complementary, participation between the two disciplines?
Definitely a complementary participation. The blending of the two goes so well together. I also feel that it just far outweighs in terms of rehab what it is I was teaching before. So I'm not saying that in terms of exercises that I'm not teaching patients, but I was from a physiotherapy point of view, I'm still doing that.
But you're complementing that.
Exactly. In terms of intermediate and advanced rehab, I just find that the patients gain much more if I do it from a yoga perspective in terms of the posture and going through one or two simple postures, because you're comprehensively treating the whole body.
A while ago I received a beautiful message, and it's an educator who's a good friend of mine, and he sends me these daily inspirations, and one of them said that the soul knows how to heal itself, but first you have to learn to still the mind.
Exactly.
You know, so part of the training of yoga is to still the mind, because meditation is a very powerful form of healing, right?
Very much
To learn
so.
to listen to the inner self.
Absolutely.
But that requires
Yeah.
you to still your mind, although you're listening.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
To be able to be quiet enough, to be able to tap into your system, you need to have the mind completely still and the monkey mind and that chattering stop, which is hard because for most of us, driving a full day, you're challenged with so many things. It's not just work pressures, it's family pressures, it's trying to figure out what you want to do for yourself as well. So in all of that, there's just so much of activity going on in the brain that it is hard to still the mind. But just
And what about the food that you eat?
very much so, the nutrition just as important.
Do you, like, in a way, kind of guide your patients to combine, you know, the nutrition with the yoga, with the physiotherapy?
Certainly. My philosophy on nutrition is not to simply follow a specific diet, but I do feel our body needs a little bit of everything.
Yes.
I think, unfortunately, as human beings, we've learned to indulge way too much. So we're not eating in moderation. And I think ultimately that's what we need to do. Eat in moderation, but have a little bit of everything, because the body needs all of that.
What do you think is perhaps for you the most beautiful aspect of combining these different disciplines?
I think the fact that it's allowed me to treat my patients a lot more comprehensively now. So it's not just looking at the knee and thinking that's what I need to be treating. I'm treating that entire limb. And then it links me to the spine as well. And there's a beautiful saying in yoga that says, you are only as young as your spine is flexible. And that really got me thinking, because if you think about it, our spine, the limbs extend from the spine. So if we have a stiff spine, our shoulders are having to work hard, which translates negatively into our hand. And then the hips have to work hard, which translates negatively down into the feet. So it's so important that we keep the spine flexible, we keep moving. And then if you have injury as well, to recognize that the body is amazing. It will still perform the functions that you're asking of it, but it will choose the path of least resistance. So you're getting your tasks done, thinking that that's fine, I'm getting it done, but you're not realizing that you're doing it through compensation. And in that way...
So there's no maximum potential use.
Exactly. And also you then start, unfortunately, causing dysfunction, muscle dysfunction, because now the body is choosing the path of least resistance and not doing it the way it should be doing it. But it's doing that because it's got an ache or it's got pain or stiffness in a joint. So it's important that one is, again, with the yoga, you can tap into, it's more of a work in rather than a work out.
Yes. I agree with that completely.
And even when I do my sessions as well, quite a number of studios will use music while they're doing yoga. I choose not to, because I just feel that's another distraction. For me, I just think we need silence more.
You need to still yourself, yes.
Exactly.
And our lives are so busy. There's noise everywhere. It's
Exactly.
literally a world of noise.
Very
you know?
much so.
Yeah, and we need to shut down that noise and just calm ourselves.
That's right.
And in a way, it's reinvigorating. It's rejuvenating. Also, the silence. Isn't it?
So true.
And I see that's why you love the nature and you love the environment. Tell us a little bit about that. What you know.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy hiking. I think Cape Town's the place to be for that. I believe them. I believe they are Mahalisburg. But we do have the natural beauty of the mountain right there, the forest, the ocean. There are very few cities in the world that can boast that.
And you know what's strange? There's very few people who go out and enjoy it.
Exactly.
You're living in that environment, but you don't see the people of that city going out and doing it. It's foreigners, it's tourists, but people don't make the time to look at the nature, to look at the environment, to look at the beauty, isn't it?
Absolutely. I always encourage my patients as well, because I mean, we're very fortunate in Cape Town. We can just sort of take a 10-minute drive and you're at the beach and you can walk along the promenade. And nature is so healing, it's therapeutic. You know, so I think there's something to be said about that for sure.
And I think part of caring for the environment, caring for animals, respecting nature, respecting the environment, creates a strong sense of self-respect within you as well, an appreciation for life, ultimately, isn't it? And it all comes to linking the breath.
That's right.
So the ability to stand and actually breathe.
Take a nice deep breath in, oxygenate everything.
What is a good yoga breath?
So you take best to close your eyes, taking away the visual stimulus, and then you just focus in on taking a nice, long, slow, deep breath in through your nose, and then an equally long, slow, complete breath out, either through the nose or a soft open mouth.
Okay, so a while ago, very many years ago, when I first got into yoga, at that time also there was this big controversy in the South African Muslim community that no, you can't do yoga is haram, and the chants of the yoga, and please, I've been through all of that. No? But anyway, so when I engaged with yoga at that time, I remember that the first thing I learned was how we breathe incorrectly, because the stomach is supposed to expand and contract at different stages of the breathing, and we were inverting that actual process.
Absolutely.
And that was so scary for me to think that, oh my God, we're breathing incorrectly.
We're not only breathing incorrectly, but also shallowly. So we're not allowing for the breath to go down to the bases of the lungs. So if you think about the tummy as being like a balloon, as you inhale, the balloon should expand, so your tummy should expand and balloon, and as you breathe out, it should depress, almost deflate like a balloon. So if you're quiet enough and then draw the breath down to the bases of your lungs and then draw it out again as you're exhaling, you're also then quietening the mind, because now you've shifted your focus onto the breath, and that also strengthens your parasympathetic nervous system, and in that way calms you down. So I always say too, you don't need a lot of time, you just need that second or two, if you're in a stressful situation, to just quickly tap in on something that we've got right there but we've forgotten. So it's not difficult at all, but we've forgotten, and we've also, as you said, reversed our breathing.
And we harm ourselves when we don't breathe correctly, right?
Yeah.
Because the breath is what maintains or sustains your life.
Breath is healing
and
in
breath
itself,
is healing,
because it's oxygenating, and even when you're exercising as well, there's a tendency to sometimes hold our breath, which is not good.
I know, often my daughter tells me, Mommy, I feel like I'm not breathing. I've just forgotten, I'm not breathing.
So it's again that coordination of the movement with the breath, and that's what yoga does as well. It allows you to coordinate your breath with the movements, which I find amazing. And also, I also was challenged with the same thing about yoga being un-Islamic. And I really must say that it made me appreciate my salah postures even more now.
I can just imagine, but we're almost at the end. What kind of advice would you like to leave the viewers? A parting comment.
Just to say that we need to keep reminding ourselves that we've got that tool right there, the breath, which is an amazing healing tool. And we need to tap into that as much as we can. And also just take a moment every single day to not only breathe deeply, but just to look around us and look at all the amazing natural beauty that we've got that can also, in a form, heal ourselves as we still our minds.
Yes, and I would like to say that sometimes just get off your chair, get off the couch, walk outside for a minute or two, look at the sky and appreciate the fact that there's life, you know. When we can do that, then we can regain our sense of humanity and an understanding and a connection with the cosmic world, because we're all interconnected.
Absolutely.
And not only humans, but we're connected to nature, to the environment, and to the animals. Yes. But thank you very much for sharing this time and for being with us. And let's hope that we can now start incorporating a holistic form of healing into our lives. And we start with the breath. So we say, Alhamdulillah, thank you Allah, that I can still do that, you know. I don't need a machine.
Breath is life.
Breath is life. Thank you, Zahida. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في